Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the I Care About You podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into our personal journeys, our well-being, and how to handle all the challenges and issues that come up in life. I'm your host, Juliana J, and today we're talking about something that touches all of us, forgiveness. I'm not going to talk about it in the way of its virtue or anything of that nature, but rather as a radical act of self-care with tangible benefits for your well-being, mentally and physically. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to order my book, Reasons to Live. It has a lot of great ideas for overcoming obstacles and challenges and really working through very dark times in your life. I think there is a lot of things in there for everyone, regardless of where you are in life, and a lot of really wonderful tools to help people who you love and know that are struggling in some way. Although the book touches a lot on suicide, ideology, thoughts, etc., that surround that topic, many of the practices, in fact, all of them, can be applied to your life, even if you aren't feeling or having those thoughts. So please check it out and take a look. I'll link the description. Put a link in the description below. So let's get into it. First, I want to talk a little bit about the neuroscience of forgiveness. Recent research from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley sheds light on how forgiveness affects our brains. When we engage in the act of forgiving, several key areas of our brain become active. The first one is empathy and perspective regions. These areas help us understand and share feelings of others, allowing us to see situations from multiple viewpoints. The second is emotional regulation centers. These regions assist in managing our emotional responses, reducing feelings of anger and resentment. And the third one is reward systems. Engaging in forgiveness can activate our brain's reward pathways, leading to feelings of relief and satisfaction and just calmness in general. So how does forgiveness rewire your brain? How does it touch these various centers and work with them? First off, it decreases activity in the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for processing fear and anger, and it shows a decrease in activity when one practices forgiveness. This reduction helps alleviate stress and diminishes reactive emotions. The second way is it activates the prefrontal cortex. Forgiveness engages the prefrontal cortex. I'm sorry, there's a bunch of kittens climbing up my leg right now, and I need to refocus. A region associated with executive functions like decision-making and emotional regulation. So that's the prefrontal cortex. This activation supports cognitive control over negative emotions. Now, the prefrontal cortex does a lot of things. This is one of them. The third one is it enhances empathy and perspective. These regions involved in empathy, such as the precuneus and temporal prelateral junction, become more active during forgiveness. This increases activity, facilitates understanding of others' perspectives, and fosters compassionate responses. I hope I pronounced those areas of the brain properly, but you get an idea that there's parts of your brain that are really actively working on understanding others' perspectives and fostering compassionate responses. Sometimes this is hard to believe for us when we're reactionary, that we actually have these components in our brain that can help us not be so reactionary and to really be able to look at a situation in all of its different facets. And the fourth one I want to talk about is it reduces stress hormones. Engaging in forgiveness can lead to a decrease in stress-related hormones like cortisol and promotes a calmer psychological state. Now, I want to pause here for a second to tell you something that happened to me last week. So I'm doing some contracting work for this new nonprofit, which is all about loving kindness. They're having a few bumps in the road for just many things. Starting a new company is a challenge. But they hired someone who is incredibly reactionary. She barrages you with this anger, and she doesn't stop talking until you say yes. I don't think she's a person who's realized yet that women should be lifting each other up, not pushing each other down so they can step on top of them to get higher. I think she's one of those people who wants to be on top and climb a ladder And she hasn't yet realized the power of collaborating with other women. I think she's bought into that capitalist mindset of they're going to take your resources if you don't stomp them down. So you better do that now. And that happened to me. It was totally out of left field. I sent a little welcome email and got back this barrage of anger. She then proceeded to go everywhere trying to undermine me in the company. And I was very upset about it. I didn't understand why this anger was this giant anger wave came at me. And that's not really how I conduct my life or who I am as a human being. And I was really caught off guard. I'm not very good at when things come at you out of left field. And I was angry. And so I sat with it over the weekend and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to forgive. And it was extremely powerful for me in just being able to move on, to put it behind me. I decided I was just going to tell the board chair I was sorry and roll with it and see where it goes. And maybe this is a learning lesson for me. And I just felt the hugest relief. I could really reframe her as somebody I feel compassion for. I just decided to come with compassion. Wow, you've lived your whole life there. I can really learn something here from that example. And it was really fabulous. Instead of feeling unempowered or like I need to quit and this isn't the place for me anymore, I was able to let it go and it felt really good. It didn't feel like I was giving my power away. It just really felt like I saw it clearly. And that's really one of the healing powers of forgiveness. Behind these neurological changes, forgiveness contributes to improved mental health, lower levels of depression and anxiety. So true. I just totally let it go. And all the anxiety and the anger and this negative self-talk just kind of melted away after I forgave this person. It also enhances your physical health, better heart health and immune function. And I think that's really true. A lot of people I know in life who are really able to forgive folks and find compassion for them have a better sense of health. And it strengthens your relationships. Increased trust and reduced conflict in interpersonal connections is very, very powerful. Now, there's a caveat to that. It does not make your relationship stronger if you forgive and it just keeps happening over and over and over again, undermining the relationship over time because you forgive and then it happens again and then you forgive and you're not heard or seen or respected. And a whole host of other factors come into that, which we're going to talk about a little later in this podcast. But by choosing to forgive, you not only release yourself from the burdens of anger and resentment, but you pave the way for a healthier, more fulfilling life. You actually increase your vibration. You become more high vibe if you can just sort of stand away from that negativity that's happening and forgive it and not be in its vibration anymore. We're talking a little bit about the health benefits of forgiveness, and I want to go beyond the brain here. Forgiveness has profound effects on your overall health. Obviously, your mental health. Forgiveness reduces symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. Your physical health. Studies show that individuals who practice forgiveness have lower blood pressure, improved heart health, as I said, better immune system. And letting go of chronic anger and resentment can boost your immune system, making you more resilient to illness, believe it or not. It's important to note that forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior or forgetting past wrongs. Instead, it's about freeing ourselves from the burden of negative emotions that can weigh us down. Forgiveness is hard because it asks us to do something that feels deeply unnatural. When we've been hurt, to let go of the pain and the anger and the need for justice or revenge, and often the desire for the past to have been different. It's so hard to let go of those because our more primitive aspects of our psyche want to protect us. And if you don't forgive, you're going to cut that person out, and then you don't have to worry about it happening again or something even worse happening or it really affecting your mental health. It's hard. It's hard to let go when you've been hurt. And here are just a few reasons why forgiveness can be so difficult. And believe me, I've had this. I'm still working through forgiveness of certain people in my life. It's really hard. I don't know. I think for some relationships, it's going to be a lifelong thing that you're working with. It'll just keep coming up when something triggers a memory or some negative self-talk related to it, or some emotional or physical response to something. And you have to go down that road of working on your forgiveness, chipping away at it a little at a time. When someone wrongs us, it often touches a deep part of our identity, our sense of self, of safety, of dignity, of trust. Certainly that was true for me. It undermined my safety, my sense of self, and my dignity and respect. Just general, I just felt like I'm not respected or supported. That was really hard. Forgiveness can feel like you're minimizing your own pain or you're pretending like it didn't matter and stuffing it down, but it did matter. And our hearts know that. I want to just say that when you forgive somebody, it isn't about pushing it down. If you're pushing it down, that's something else that is not forgiveness. And that is a tangled web of how you see yourself, your own personal worth, your lack of self love, of worth, of being valid, lots of negative self talk and negative beliefs, your self esteem, all these other factors come into just pushing it down and not dealing with it. I'm talking about when pain is personal, it's very hard for us because the person or the situation has attacked our sense of self, safety, dignity, trust, value, and it has like crushed that. So the old beliefs of worth, worthiness, value, if you can be loved, bubble to the surface. The second reason is we want accountability. Forgiveness is sometimes confused with condoning or excusing. If someone hasn't taken responsibility for the harm they caused, forgiving them can make you feel like you're letting them off the hook, you're stuffing it down, you're not caring about your own needs, and we crave justice or at the very least acknowledgement. And when you don't get that, I think this is one of the main reasons why there's a few people in my life it will be a lifetime to forgive them because they never acknowledge it. They always have an excuse for why it was like that. Even when they can tell they've really hurt you or they did something wrong, it'll be just, again, just like that woman, this wave of anger comes at you or whatever the emotion is, and they're justifying their behavior, justifying it, rather than acknowledging that they're human and they can make a mistake. And that can be hard because we don't get accountability or acknowledgement. Another reason why forgiveness is so hard, so true, is the wounds feel fresh or repeating. If the harm is recent or ongoing, it's incredibly difficult to forgive, especially when you forgive and the next day something else happens. Our nervous systems stay activated in protection mode. Similarly, if the wound is part of a long pattern, like from childhood or past relationships or the work world or toxic situations, forgiveness can feel impossible until we feel truly safe. And that came up for me in that situation. I just felt like here's another situation of a woman identifying me as a woman and then trying to crush me because I'm going to take the resources. And just how hard that is and devaluing that is. That happened to me a lot when I was really young, just first in the work world, and I didn't really understand it. And I thought that's how you're supposed to be to each other, I guess, because that's what people were modeling to me. And I did it myself, which I feel very horrible about now. It was my responsibility that I use that as a role model and not finding some more positive way of being in the work world and then modeling myself after that. I took that on and I did that for a while. And then one day I realized that that's just a ploy to keep us all down. We need to start helping each other. And so if you feel like the harm is ongoing or just happening to you over and over again, which can be in relationships, especially, you just keep getting involved with the same sort of people and it just re-triggers and you're just adding to this pile and you have this giant pile of things you can't forgive or things that have happened to you. And so when somebody does something to you, it's not just that act of what happened in that moment, but it's coming up for you with all the other times you were treated unfairly or wrongly and no one cared. Another reason why we find it so hard to forgive is that we think forgiveness means reconnection. Many people believe that forgiving someone means you have to resume the relationship and trust them again, but you can forgive and still set firm boundaries or even walk away. Forgiveness is for your heart, for your benefit. This is really the self-care component that I'm talking about. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back in, letting people off the hook, letting people walk all over you. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself to be free. And I didn't really understand that when people would say it until this situation that happened to me last week. And I was able to just forgive and walk away. And it was so amazing. I can't even tell you all. It was incredible. Oh my God. It was just, I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was really wonderful. But I do have a firm boundary now in my mind. I don't get involved with that person. That person can do whatever they want, and I'm just over here doing my thing, and I don't interact with that person I'm cordial, what have you, but that's her demons. And I appreciate her showing me her demons because it allowed me to reflect on who I am as a person and what demons I might have that I need to work on. Here's a really big thing for me: waiting for an apology. We often expect or need an apology to begin the forgiveness process. When it never comes, we're left holding the wound alone. Forgiveness without apology feels like doing double emotional labor. So true. This is a huge thing for me. I do need somebody to acknowledge it. It's very hard to forgive and walk away if they don't acknowledge it. But like I just said in my experience last week, I was able to do that and it was incredible. But up until last week, I really needed an apology. Another thing that happens to us is we're still holding shame and rage. Sometimes we're not angry at the other person, we're angry at ourselves for letting it happen, for trusting, for not acting sooner, for forgiving someone else can mean facing your own grief and shame. And that takes time. That's huge. Really, really huge. It takes self-reflection to be able to really understand, what am I really angry here about? And for me, some of that situation that happened last week was a reminder that I used to step on other people to climb a ladder in my early days of my career. I didn't do that for long. It was gross and I didn't feel good about it, but I did do it. And that brought up this old shame and guilt around that. And just what a jerk I was. There's a lot of embarrassment around that. And so in forgiving that person, I also had to forgive myself, which is a whole nother process and incredibly hard. So forgiveness, it's a process, not a switch. You don't just overnight. We're taught to treat forgiveness like it's a one-time act. You forgive and move on. But real forgiveness often happens in layers. It might feel peace one day and then a wave of hurt resurfaces months later, years later. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you're healing. And that's what I was talking about with some forgiveness is really a lifelong game. You're just forgiving a little bit of it at a time. You're peeling it away. You're peeling all the layers away and working on it throughout life as something triggers it back into the present. This is a really big thing I saw in school when I was in high school all the time. We feel that there's a lot of power in holding on. Sometimes holding on to the anger, resentment gives us a sense of control. It may feel like the only power we have left. Forgiveness can feel like giving up that power, even though paradoxically, it can also be a way of reclaiming it. So this is about retelling that story to yourself. It's not, the power doesn't lie in holding on to the anger and resentment and making that person pay for it over and over every time they see you. The power can be in the forgiveness of it. It's not worth your own happiness to carry that. So you let it go. And in not giving that power of control any peace of mind, any thought at all, you create the power of letting it go is more powerful and affirming than holding on to it, because also it allows you to walk on and leave it behind, which is the ultimate power. As long as you're holding on to it, you might think you have this power because you're controlling how you feel about it, but in all reality, that person or situation still has the power because it's affecting you. Once you stop letting it affect you, you have the power. I want to point out that trauma complicates all of this. If you've experienced trauma, especially repeated or relational trauma, your nervous system learns to expect harm. Forgiveness isn't just an emotional act, it's a psychological one, a physiological one. Your body may not feel safe enough to release the hurt yet. Your hurt is held in your body in many, many places. And the process of forgiving and dealing with deep trauma and hurt is so much more complex. You can forgive little things, and that's really wonderful, but you have to go through the process of, is it also held in my body somewhere? Do I need to retell some stories to myself so that the memories are different? Not that you're making up your old history, but you're looking at it from a different perspective. And that's a lot of work that is really worthwhile, really amazing. Again, probably lifelong in a lot of ways. For me, it is. I've had a lot of trauma in my life and, crops back up all the time. Even in this situation last week, here's another person who doesn't respect me and is going to treat me like dirt and that I have no value and is going to try to crush me, but then turn around and be nice to my face. It brought up a lot of this old trauma and I work on it when it presents itself. But I don't want to make light of trauma, and I urge you to get help and support. We've also been told that forgiveness is required. Religious or cultural messages can add pressure to forgive before we're ready. That pressure can create guilt and shame, especially if you're still angry and hurt. Forgiveness that is forced or rushed isn't healing, it's bypassing. especially with this trauma that we're talking about, or things that, say, happened in a family that people just want to move on from. Or oftentimes you get toxic positivity, like, you broke up 6 months ago with them. Why are you still upset or hurting? And it just recognize that when it happens, that it's just other people are incapable of helping you or being in those hard spaces. My book, Reasons to Live, talks a lot about that, in that we're just not a society that values any tools for really helping one another through the hard times. But there's so much hard times in life, and we don't know how to help each other. And instead of going to get those tools so we can be there for one another, we just use a lot of toxic positivity and other things. And we make the people feel like they have to forgive. And that's in the bypassing category, rather than truly forgiving as an act of self-care. So why forgive? Not to forget, not to excuse, not to restore a relationship, but to free yourself from carrying the pain that doesn't belong to you anymore. Forgiveness is about your peace, not theirs. It's about you. It's about you walking through your life positively and not picking up all of this negative self-talk, negative beliefs, guilt, shame, anger, anxiety, stress, all the things. By forgiving, you can let that go. And it's about you. It takes strength, courage, and time to forgive. It doesn't have to be done all at once. Sometimes the first act of forgiveness is simply saying, I'm open to not carrying this forever, but I'm not ready yet. And that's totally okay. But I'm open to not carrying this forever. If you're struggling to forgive, you're not alone. You're being honest. And that honesty is part of the healing. If you aren't honest with yourself about forgiving folks, you will just stuff it down or bypass it, or some components of it. It's much easier to just be honest. Are you struggling with it? Is it hard? Does it hurt deeply? Where does it hurt? What do you need to do to get rid of it? Do you need support, help, understanding? What do you need? Would you like help for forgiveness? Do you need a forgiveness practice or a journal prompt or professional help or a psychic? Or do you need just a personal day or a personal week? Try and figure out what you need within inside yourself to start that forgiving process. Remember, it's a process and it takes time. So here I'm going to give you just some practical steps to cultivate forgiveness. If they resonate with you or they sound good, please put them into practice and let us know how it goes. We'd love to know. This, as I always say, is a community here at I Care About You. And if you have a process that works for you on forgiveness, or you try one of the things I'm about to talk about and it works for you, please let us know. You can DM me, you can go to my website and contact me. You can leave a comment if you're listening or watching this somewhere where you can, and let us know how it's going. So the first thing that you can do is acknowledge your feelings. Recognize the pain and the hurt you've experienced. It's okay to feel angry or betrayed or extreme sadness or anything. Have a good cry. I mean, that's what I did after I got off the phone last week. And I was walking in public, so it was just really a lot. But I just acknowledged immediately, this makes me feel devalued. And that is bringing up all the times in my life and all the trauma that I've had and all the relationships I had where I never had value, or I felt like I never had value. It wasn't just that one situation. It was my entire life of, why does this keep coming up for me? Was in my mind at the time. So acknowledge your feelings. Empathize with the offender. That's what I was kind of talking about earlier in this podcast. I tried to understand why this person would do the things that they're doing, and if I could see some of that within myself, which is really hard and sometimes painful, but it gives you empathy. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can provide context beyond somebody just raging at you or some situation that was very unjust. To kind of put yourself in their shoes or understand their motivations for acting that way. Make a conscious decision to forgive. Make a choice to let go of resentment. This decision is for your well-being, not necessarily the benefit of the other person. Forgiveness is for you. If you've been in a really horrible relationship and you've just left it and you're extremely pissed, which I hear you, 100%. But you're not going to be able to go on and have another relationship that is really in a space that you want it to, unless you decide you're going to forgive for yourself, not necessarily for them. You're going to have some strong boundaries there. You're going to let go and walk away. But you forgive that experience because maybe you got a lot of lessons out of it you can take forward into the next relationship. Or maybe you realized you are not attracting the people that you want in your life, and what will you need to do for that? The second you decide to forgive, it gives you the power to figure out what you're going to do next and to let go and to actually maybe even walk away with some tools, hard-earned tools, but tools for the next great thing. Work through the pain so hard. Engage in activities that help process your emotions, such as journaling, therapy, talking to trusted friends, finding support, meditation, affirmations, listening to stories of other people who've gone through the same thing. All of those types of ways to work through the pain are really, really helpful when you're struggling. And the hardest one is to release the grudge. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over prolonged anger. Again, releasing the grudge is about you. It's about your mental, physical, emotional well-being. It is not about the other person. And with that, I want you to know that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It is a path to healing, peace, and renewed joy. By understanding the science behind it, we can appreciate its power and take the steps towards healthier and happier life. If you know somebody who's really struggling with forgiveness, please pass this podcast on to them. We're a community here, and we are lifting each other up, helping each other out. So if you know somebody who might need help with forgiveness, with understanding it, with understanding that it's a biological thing that happens in your brain, in your body, all of this is not just what you think about something. There's so much more behind it. And once you understand that, you can shift it into work, into doing what you need to do for yourself, for your own radical self-care, not for the other person. And you can reframe it in a way that is empowering and true, and step out of what society is trying to tell you to keep everyone stratified for whatever reason. So please share it if you know somebody who could use it. And I want to thank you for joining me today on I Care About You. If this episode resonated with you, I'm really, really happy to be here to support you. And if I can do anything else, please reach out and know that I love you and I support you. And I care about you. And you can get through this and come out even more powerful than you ever imagined. So self-care, my friend, and I'll see you in the next one.